What's up, y'all? It's your boy Progress West, and welcome to the D Count. It has long been believed that superheroes save everybody, and not too many people expire in these movies. Well, I'm here to prove them wrong. See, this is a new series where I go through the Marvel Universe and count how many times characters expire, while also briefly going through the story so that their exits from the mortal planes are in context. And it's only right that we start off with the movie that started off the monstrous MCU, Iron Man. For those familiar with Dead Meat and the K counts, this is kind of like that, but with superheroes. So shout out to James A. Janice, which is the coolest name ever, by the way. Leave a like if you like the video, subscribe if you digging the vibes, and let's see how many D's we can count. Wait. Darn it, Greg. We need a better catchphrase. Let's see how many D's we can count. It makes it sound like we're counting their dicks. We start our story off with our hero, Tony Stark, getting lit, and he's joined by 3 of America's heroes. We have this one guy sitting here looking nervous. I haven't seen someone that nervous in the backseat since that one time I lost my virginity. We also find out that Tony went 12 for 12 with the cover girls from last year.
That is an excellent question. Yes and no. March and I had a scheduling conflict, but fortunately the Christmas cover was twins.
And after a quick selfie, we get a boom! We see the Humvee in front of him totally explode. What the heck? Unfortunately, since we didn't see any people in there before or after the explosion, we have no D's to count. Gary, I really hate that we're calling it the D count. Yeah, I know YouTube is crazy and will demonetize us. Motherfucker, I got like 200 subs. I'm not making no money anyways. With our hero and his new best friends completely blindsided, we get our first 3 Ds when they try to get out to defend Tony. Seeing his defenders fall, our boy tries to escape, but ends up taking a shot of shrapnel to the chest, just like Mia Khalifa. I mean, or so I've heard. I don't watch that kind of stuff. Tony then wakes up looking like he has the worst hangover, and then we get our title card. Thanks, James. It's then followed with the 36-hour rewind where we see Tony being celebrated for being a weapons manufacturer genius. We find out that Tony's parents died in a car crash, and good man old guy Obadiah Stane stepped in to watch the company. We also find out that Tony came and took over his father's weapons company at the young age of 21. Jeez, at 21, I was doing keg stands with a hamster in my ass. Seems like I wasted my talent. Here, giving Tony the award is his best friend and military liaison to Stark Industries, James Rhodes, who looks like he might slap you for looking at him silly. But I have a feeling he is going to look a little bit nicer in the next movie. Unfortunately, Tony isn't there for the award because he's out there gambling. On his way out, he meets a reporter that asks the most important questions.
You've been called the Da Vinci of our time. What do you say to that?
Absolutely ridiculous. I don't paint.
And what do you say to your other nickname, the Merchant of Death?
That's not bad.
This leads to some grown-up interrogations that I can't show you on YouTube, but ends with a beautiful view and Tony's assistant Pepper Potts taking out the trash in the morning.
I've got your clothes here. They've been dry cleaned and pressed, and there's a car waiting for you outside that will take you anywhere you'd like to go.
You must be the famous Pepper Potts. After all these years, Tony still has you picking up the dry cleaning.
I do anything and everything that Mr. Stark requires, including occasionally taking out the trash. Will that be all?
After a quick flight with his best bud, he then ends up in Afghanistan, showing off a line that was incredible in the trailers.
They say the best weapon is one you never have to fire. I respectfully disagree. I prefer the weapon you only have to fire once. For your consideration, the Jericho.
And after a suspicious call from an old geezer, we get fast forwarded to current times. Tony is messed up bad from the attack, and after pulling out the world's biggest catheter from his nose, he feels something weird in his chest. So he calmly rips his bandages off and he sees a battery in his chest. That's right, in his chest. Full of questions, he meets his new roommate, Dr. Ho Yin's son, and he discovers that he has shrapnel in his chest, moving towards his heart, and this battery thing is the only thing keeping him alive. I'm not gonna lie to you, that's pretty lit. After this brief explanation, we get the bad guys from the group known as the 10 Rings that want Tony to make weapons for them. He politely declines, so they politely convince him with a nice refreshing bath. Since the 10 rings were so courteous, Tony feels obligated to help them out too. But Tony is taking a little too long, so his 10 rings buddies come in to teach him a lesson by threatening his roommate. It looks like this works and lights a fire under Tony's ass, and he gets to work. But little did they know, he was building something else. Surprise, motherfucker! Tony built a Megatron looking death armor that's here to return the hospitality. While trying to put his armor on, we have 2 intruders that take a homemade explosion to the face. With Tony's suit still needing to charge, our good doctor takes a weapon and chases the 10 rings away, trying to buy Tony some time. We see the 10 rings back up, rushing to Tony's cell and spotting 2 unalive bodies, but those are the 2 bodies from the homemade explosion, so we won't double count them. Running into his cell, we see one ring's member get backhanded into oblivion, while 3 of his friends unload in Tony's direction. Having not seen Zombieland and not knowing about the double tap, they celebrate the victory until Tony pops out and adds them to the D-list. In the darkest hallway I have ever seen, we can barely make out Tony walking through gunfire, taking out 3 more goons. After chasing the rest down the hall like the gosh darn Terminator, we hear one person off screen getting sent up to whichever god they pray to. When Tony breaks down the door like the worst Jehovah's Witness ever and adds 1 more to the D count when this guy's bullet bounces off Tony and hits himself. The leader of the 10 rings decides Tony is a bad business partner and he wants a hostile takeover, so he shoots at him but misses and gets hit with Tony's missile. But I think I'm going to hold off on adding him to the count for now. With our bad guys vanquished, Tony decides it's time for him and the good doctor to get out of there. Unfortunately, the doctor isn't doing too good, having sacrificed himself to help Tony. After a tearful goodbye, our scientist guy adds himself to the D count. But Tony isn't happy about these high numbers we're hitting. He is pissed. So he steps outside, giving us a majestic shot of the Mark I Iron Man armor. Not really into fashion, these 10 rings lackeys shoot at Tony. After a couple seconds of bullets bouncing off of him, Tony decides that it's his turn and we see his flamethrowers. When the heck did he come up with those? Incinerate everyone and everything around him. And in this one scene, we see these 2 people behind the main squad, but they disappear later, so I'm going to add them to the D count anyways. And the rest just start unloading on Tony until he decides the party's over and takes off. We don't see the flame jets hurt anybody, so we aren't going to add any to the count. After ditching the armor and a quick walk through the desert, our boy Tony gets saved and brought back to America, battered and broken. Getting a big welcome back hug from my friend Obadiah Old Man Stain. Aw, isn't he nice? He's the bestest guy ever. We then get introduced to Agent Coulson, who is still trying to work out a cool name for his squad.
I'm Agent Phil Coulson with the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division.
After announcing that Tony is back and he is shutting down the weapons manufacturing part of his company, we get this silly scene of Obadiah cruising on a scooter, smoking a cigar. Why was this in the movie? And who okayed this? I don't like it. It's pretty funny though, I'm not gonna lie. After arguing with Obadiah about the arc reactor, we get a scene of what looks like Tony showing Obadiah his D. Speaking of arc reactors, Tony has just built a new one and has Pepper help him install it. I have to admit, there were pretty good effects. It looks like he really has a hole on his chest and Pepper really sells this scene. Luckily, she plugged it in right and we don't have to add Tony to the D count. But on the other side of the world, we see the 10 rings has found Iron Man's armor and dun dun dun! We see the leader is still alive, which is why we didn't add him to the D count earlier. And ooh, look, they found buried treasure. But Tony don't care. They can have his hand-me-downs because he is across the world working on a new suit, leading to some hilarious trial and error. And this is really something that is missing from modern superhero movies. I really miss the hero learning about the powers and how to control them. Now, everything is just so rushed and everybody is automatically a badass. It takes away from the magic of growing with the hero and watching someone who makes mistakes but tries to do better. But tinkering is hard work, so after a piece of break the old guy Obadiah Stane, where he reveals the board is trying to take the company from Tony since he wants to be Mr. Peaceful, he gets right back to the action. After finally perfecting flight, he goes for a real quick test drive, test flight, leading to the most badass suit-up scene ever. Seeing this in the theaters was insane. After a chilling joyride, our boy makes it back to his house for the most elegant landing. But our boy Tony is a genius, a billionaire philanthropist, and all work and no play makes Tony a dull boy. So he hits a party and gets his groove on with Pepper Potts. There's something about the way he looks at her. Somebody should let him know that dating your employees is gross and can open you up to a lawsuit. Realizing they're getting too hot and too heavy, our boy goes to grab a drink where he runs into
Carrie.
Christine.
That's right.
once again, who lets him know his business has still been making weapons behind his back.
You have a lot of nerve showing up here tonight. Is this what you call accountability? It's a town called Gulmira. Heard of it?
When were these taken?
Yesterday.
After angrily bringing this up to old man Obadiah Stane, we find out the biggest twist in comic book history. It was Obadiah that is still pushing the weapons. What? He was even the one who filed the injunction to get Tony kicked out of Stark Industries. But I mean, come on. His name is Obadiah Stane. That just sounds like a villain. Back at home, Tony thinks about what he just learned while watching a report about the 10 Rings' continued activities in the Middle East. Hey, look, we know that guy. We see some gunfire, but we don't see any bodies or anyone hit, so we don't have anything to add to the count. After a suit-up scene that will make Michael Bay blush, we see our hero suited the fuck up, and he looks pissed. I guess he has some anger to let out. We cut back to the Middle East just in time to see a whole bunch of work from me. What we do see is 2 civilians being pushed into a building with a bunch of gunfire after, so we will unfortunately have to add them to the count. We see another bad guy toss a grenade in the house, but again, without seeing any bodies, we're not adding them to the count. The bad guys are throwing all the civilians they can find into a corner, which I assume is going to make my job harder. When, surprise, did somebody order a kick-ass stripper in red paint? Because that's what we got. We see a golden red transformer Ryu uppercut a dude straight up into the D count, followed by a pimp hand repulsor blast, adding 3 more to the D count. When our golden avenger tries to blast some more, we see the bad guys have taken hostages. With no chance of escaping or saving the hostages, our hero has no choice but to give up. But it was just a ruse, because our hero then uses tiny baby rockets to add 6 more to the D count. With the bad guys dispatched, we see our hero take his leave. Goodbye, hero. Seeing that the coast is clear, the leader of the bad guy brigade uses a 1980s cell phone to call Miss Cleo and see if he makes it to the sequel. Unfortunately, Tony has other plans and leaves him to the fate of the people he saved. We don't see his fate, but after the destruction this man has caused, I don't see the people letting him go and live peacefully, so we're going to add him to the count. Leading to the most badass scene of the movie, our boy Tony flies and boom, gets hit by a missile. Shaking off his embarrassment, we see him explode a tank, but once again, we don't see who's in there. So what we will do is we'll add a tank, okay? It's my show, I do what I want. We're gonna add a tank to the count. So yeah, 1 tank to the count. The rest of the tank's buddies don't take too kindly to that, so they shoot at Tony. But Tony is so over this that he flies into the sky and destroys a set of his Jericho missiles they stole, adding 6 more to the count. With his job done, our hero flies off, but he didn't notice he had the US military tracking him. His buddy Rose just happens to be in the military party that's tracking Tony, and he has his suspicions. After a call to Tony, and the most convincing lie I have ever heard.
What the hell is that noise?
Oh yeah, I'm driving the top down.
Why do you sound out of breath, Tony?
I'm not, I was just jogging in the
I
canyon.
thought you were driving.
Right, I was driving to the canyon, where I'm gonna jog.
That's my exit.
Tony says that he has to go. Well, that's because he has 2 of America's finest on his tail. He ducks and dodges and floats like a butterfly and stings like a bee, but unfortunately he gets hit and can't take much more of that. So he has to call Rhodes back for a little help. Talk about awkward. The fighters lose Tony as he hides under one of the planes, and the coast is clear until, oh no, the other pilot spots him, and too bad for Tony, the fighter he's hiding on took his flying lessons from Anakin Anakin Skywalker. But this barrel roll of D causes Tony to go flying and smash the other jet's wings. Silly jet, you can't fly with the other wing, and he knows that, so he up out there, but oops, his parachute won't open. I hate it when it does that. Luckily for him, he's not going on the D count. You know our boy Tony isn't going to let that happen, so he lends a helping hand and zooms off, giggling with Terrence Howard about how hard it is out here for a pimp, and flies off. How can our hero destroy an American jet and get away with it? You see, it's okay because it was an unfortunate training exercise. But our old guy Obadiah Stane is no spring chicken. He knows something is wrong and he doesn't look too happy about it. Back at home, Pepper gets a look at Tony's junk. But while she attends to his bullet holes, we shoot back to the other side of the world and see that dun dun dun, old guy Stane is working with the 10 rings. After recommending a great dermatologist, old man Stane decides he's doing a hostile takeover too and puts in his noise cancelling earphones. He then plays that new Lil Nas X album, but the 10 rings leader isn't a fan of Billy Ray Cyrus, so his brains explode, adding him to the D count. We then get a shot of old man Obadiah Stane leaving the meeting and instructing his guards to finish the job, where it's a little blurry, but I count 19 more bodies to add to our D count. It could be more, it could be less, but after 10 minutes of rewinding it and watching it over and over again, I'm pretty confident in my count. Let me know down below if you get a different number. With Stane stealing Tony's first suit, he is focused on creating his own suit, while Tony is trying to convince Pepper to hack Stark Industries' mainframe. He is trying to hunt down and destroy all of his weapons. After a failed quitting attempt, Pepper seems to be on board and she's helping Stark Industries hacking away. Using a huge USB drive that Tony gave her, she accesses all kinds of confidential information, including missile schematics and even old man Obadiah Stane's blueprints for his own robot suit. Dang, that old man works fast. While snooping around, she also discovers that Obadiah is the one that set Tony up in the beginning. His plan was to have the 10 rings take Tony out by telling them he was a nobody, but they caught Tony alive and then decided they wanted a bigger pay cut. While downloading the information, old man Obadiah Stane comes in, and I have to say, Jeff Bridges is doing a fantastic job in this role. This cat and mouse scene with Pepper gives me anxiety, wondering if he's going to blow her brains up too. Thankfully, he doesn't, and after a quick chat, Pepper takes her USB drive and says sayonara homie and dips out. But Stane is still no dummy and knows something is wrong, so he checks his computer and sees Pepper has been a bad girl. Running out of the building, she is stopped by Coulson, and he tags along for a meeting she missed so she can explain everything. Knowing that the jig is up and that the authorities are coming, old man Stane runs to get his suit, but finds out they still haven't figured out how it works yet, leading to one of the greatest lines in the movie ever.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps!
Realizing that only Tony can build a suit like this, Stane drops a visit to Tony, plays some Kids Bop in his ear, and in one of the most intense scenes in the MCU, he rips Tony's heart out of his chest. Well, not really his heart, but close enough. In his moment of triumph, he's all like, "Hey Tony, got your heart," but then decides this game isn't as fun as the got your nose game and takes his leave. Our hero, heartless and realizing his substitute parent figure betrayed him, decides he doesn't belong on the D count yet. That's for another movie. So he crawls to his workshop and tries to grab his original chest battery and fails. He has been defeated by the arch enemies of toddlers everywhere, a tall shelf. Giving up and knowing he has lost, he gives into his fate and waits for the cold sweet embrace of the D. He wants the cold embrace of the D. When, wait, one of his robot arm thingies I never talked about makes cute little R2-D2 noises and gives him the battery. Hooray! With our old man staying triumphant, he gloats in front of a huge Iron Man armor. But hold on, I gotta stop it here. What exactly is his plan? Pepper discovered and downloaded proof of old man Obadiah Stane working with the evil faction trying to get Tony killed. Then she linked up with government agents, obviously giving all the information to them, and his plan is to kill Tony, take his reactor, and power up his own suit. I'm sorry, what? How does that help? Yes, when the agents come, you can defend yourself and wipe them all out. But then what? Your life is over. You're going on America's Most Wanted list forever. They are not going to stop until they get you locked behind bars. But luckily for old guy Stain, Tony's reactor does work and his suit powers up. Unfortunately for him, it turns out Tony survived, and I don't think he's too happy with his old friend. As Tony suits up, Pepper brings Agent Coulson as backup to finally bring down Stain's evil old guy terror. They find old man Stain's suit and Pepper hears the words no man ever wants to hear.
I thought it'd be bigger.
But our boy Stain has self-esteem issues, so he doesn't take that too well. He chases down Pepper in his real suit, which is freaking huge by the way. As she escapes, we see one agent get the Serena Williams backhand as another one gets smashed to the ground. Pepper narrowly escaping and makes it outside, but then Stain comes up through the floor looking like an evil Iron Giant. But before he can fire Pepper, our boy Tony grabs him, flies away, and body slams him in traffic. We see Stain flip a moving car, but without seeing how many people are in there, and we have nobody to add to the count. But what we do see is a family of 4 almost slam into Stain and honk the horn at him. This just sets off Stain's road rage, and he decides these 4 we can add to the count. As he picks up the whole car and is about to slam it into Tony's face, Tony uses his Care Bear stare and blasts Obadiah away while catching the family's car. But this ungrateful bitch tries to run Tony over. With our hero shaking and trying to recover, we see Stain fly across the freeway, grab a motorcycle while someone is driving it, and use the motorcycle as nunchucks and smacks Tony away. Now, I'm not going to add the motorcycle driver to the count because it looks pretty survivable. What do you think? Let me know down below. Should we add him to the count, or do you think he still survived? After getting stomped out by old guy Stain, Tony gets a great idea and blasts off into the sky to get away. But old man Stain has some upgrades and shows off his brand new rocket legs. So wait! Tony tries his best to get away, but Stain's upgrades are just too good. Stain grabs Tony by the neck and is ready to add him to the list when Tony has a little question for him.
My suit is more advanced in every way.
How'd you solve the icing problem?
Icing problem.
This is a callback to when Tony first made his new suit, where he had to add the red and yellow paint to his armor to prevent the freezing from the atmosphere. But Stain doesn't know this and his suit freezes up. After a quick game of whack-a-mole, Tony sends Stain back to Earth. Thinking the battle is won, Tony starts taking off his armor when Stain pops out, starts whipping Tony badly. Tony should have do something was up. We didn't add him to the kill count. After a brief fight, if you can call it that, Tony ducks away and radios Pepper, who is going to lend a helping hand. Tony is going to distract old man Stain while Pepper overloads the reactor in Stark Industries to blast the roof off the Stain is on. But Stain is too strong for Tony, so he decides the only way to take out old man Obadiah Stain is to sacrifice himself. He orders Pepper to blast the device, and our boy narrowly dodges. Taking a face full of energy, old man Obadiah Stain is finally defeated when he falls into the reactor for a mighty explosion. With so much damage done to the city, Stark Industries has to have a press conference to explain away the damages. They blame it on a malfunctioning prototype and tell the world it was just an accident, with Tony taking the stand to confirm that yes, it was all an accident and the day was saved by this Iron Man, which is Tony Stark's bodyguard. A nice throwback to the comics. Pepper gets to say goodbye to Coulson, who lets her know that his crew has finally decided on a hip new name.
Just call us S.H.I.E.L.D.
That sounds so much better, honestly. Taking the podium, Tony starts by being a good boy and reading the flashcards that Coulson gave him. And after a quick whisper from Rhodes, we end the movie with the same sentence that would end the MCU.
I am Iron Man.
With our day saved and our new hero exposed, let's see how many people actually expired this movie. So, without further ado, let's get to the D count. Alright y'all, pardon us for not having a fancy graph yet. We're still working on it. But after counting our D's so far in this movie, we count 60 guys dead with 2 women and 1 tank. You can just imagine the pie chart right there and just, you know, we'll go from there. I promise y'all, next video is gonna be crazy. Anyways, we're currently at like 212 subs. When we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll be dropping the next episode, Iron Man 2. So leave a like, subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time. I love y'all. One love.